In 1997, the San Antonio Spurs were one of the worst teams in the entire NBA. Finishing the season with just 20 wins and with a rookie head coach leading the way, their future was uncertain. Their two best players were an aging Dominique Wilkins just 1 year away from his last NBA season, and their franchise player in David Robinson, who was sidelined with a season-ending injury that would linger for the rest of his career. The franchise was in a downward spiral with no end in sight. But what they did have was one more chance to make it right. Coming off the worst season in franchise history, the Spurs were given the third best odds to get the first overall pick in the 1997 draft. Exactly what the organization needed to rejuvenate their roster. But according to pre-draft evaluations, the gap between the potential first pick and the third pick was massive. Get the third pick and settle for a small forward out of Utah named Keith Van Horn, or win the lottery and land on the best NBA prospect in over a decade, a 4-year starter out of Wake Forest by the name of Tim Duncan. And on the day of the draft lottery, the future of the Spurs franchise and the future of the NBA would change forever.
The second pick in the 1997 NBA draft goes to the Philadelphia 76ers. And that means that the first pick in the 1997 NBA draft goes to the San Antonio Spurs. Congratulations.
See this guy right here? That's Spurs chairman Peter Holt. And in this moment, he was the happiest man on earth because he just won the first overall pick in the 97 NBA draft. Who he would pick was already a foregone conclusion. But not Peter or anyone else at the time knew that the Spurs just won the rights to one of the greatest players in the history of the game. And this very moment was the beginning of one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history. And now 26 years later, luck would have it that the Spurs have found themselves right in the middle of another historic night once again, because they now have the rights to the #1 overall pick in the 2023 NBA draft. And the prospect they plan on picking up is claimed to be bigger and better than anything we have ever seen. As we get closer to draft day, the hype surrounding Victor Wembanyama is growing by the minute. Experts and analysts claiming he's the greatest prospect in the history of the sport. Some even claiming he's the best prospect of any sport ever. The franchise that gets him believed to have hit the basketball jackpot that will set them up for 2 decades of success and championships. But how good can one prospect actually be? Fans already talking about future championships for the Spurs since they've essentially landed Victor. But turning potential greatness into real winning and championships is a task that very few players have ever been capable of doing. Today's video is sponsored by DraftKings. The playoffs are in full swing, and even if your team is losing, DraftKings is here to make you a winner, because DraftKings is bringing the high-stakes action to all new customers. Just place a $5 wager on any sport and receive $150 in bonus bets. Talk about a lock, my friends. This is as automatic as it gets. Wondering where to put that $150 in bonus bets? Try DraftKings same-game parlays, where you can combine multiple bets from the same game into one big bet at a shot for an even bigger payout. And if mobile sports betting is not yet available in your state, you can still get in on the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy, where they offer cash prize contests for nearly every sport. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use promo code JimmyHighRoller, bet $5 on any wager, and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Out of the last 25 #1 overall draft picks, how many do y'all think have won a Finals MVP? Maybe 4 or 5? How about 1? There has been one #1 overall pick in the last 25 seasons who has won a Finals MVP. But Finals MVPs are about the toughest thing to win in all of basketball. So what about regular season MVPs? How many of the last 25 first overall picks have won at least one of those? 2. LeBron James and Derrick Rose. That's it. But how about this? How many of the last 25 #1 overall picks do you think have won a championship? They could be a role player for all I care. As long as they have a ring, it counts. But the answer is still just 6. Winning in the NBA is very, very hard to do. But fans and experts are already putting this burden on a kid who hasn't even been drafted yet. But we've done this before. Unrealistic hype and expectations met with inevitable disappointment. It feels like just yesterday, Zion Williamson was being regarded as the greatest basketball prospect of the decade. And yet here we are, 4 years later, and Zion has played in just 29 games over the last 2 seasons and has yet to play in a single playoff game. Great player, but as of right now, far from the franchise-altering force he was hyped up to be. Here's another player who was said to be a generational prospect coming into the NBA, nicknamed the Fresh Prince, being that he was the successor to LeBron King James. This is Ben Simmons, a player that was too afraid to take a shot in a playoff game and peaked in his second season in the league. And we do this to young players far more often than you would think. DeAndre Ayton is a solid NBA player, nowhere near a superstar, but he could be a key piece on a championship-winning team. Now, would you believe that just 3 months before he was drafted, he was labeled as a, quote, anomaly? In the moment, it always feels like the next guy up is going to be the guy. And then shortly after, we forget about the unwarranted comparisons and move on to the next guy. But to really understand how rare it is to draft a player who becomes an all-time great, stays healthy, and stays loyal to the franchise that drafted him, we have to look at the teams and players who actually did it. If we're talking about transcendent players who led the team that drafted them to multiple championships, then that list only includes 7 players who were drafted in the modern NBA. Over 3,000 players drafted since 1980, and 7 of them went on to be a loyal, franchise-altering talent. These players right here are icons, legends in their franchise and to the game, and they only come around about once in a decade. Now, if Victor is as good as advertised, he could be added to this list one day, but the path to get there is long and riddled with players who fell short. But in the NBA, even the stars, superstars, and once-in-a-generation talents struggle to win the ultimate prize. Luka Doncic has been a phenom since he entered the NBA, so far exceeding all pre-draft expectations. And yet 5 seasons into his NBA journey, and he has yet to see the finals, and even missed the playoffs in this last season. Kevin Durant is one of the greatest players to ever touch a basketball, but even he had to abandon the team that drafted him to join a juggernaut of a team to win a championship. James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul, Damian Lillard, Joel Embiid, the list of all-time great players who have yet to win a title or find any real success in the playoffs is massive, which makes the expectations on Wembanyama all the more baffling. To think that a 19-year-old can come into a struggling franchise and turn everything around may not be realistic. And even worse, it may not even be fair to the young man. Ironically, the best turnaround directly caused by a rookie in modern NBA history was by Tim Duncan. After the Spurs drafted Duncan, their win total jumped from 20 wins in 1997 to 56 wins in 1998. A 36-win jump in Timmy's first season with the team and a championship in his second season. This is by far the greatest leap a team has ever seen simply by adding a rookie to their roster. Larry Bird was another immediate franchise-altering player for the Celtics, but that was nearly half a century ago. LeBron couldn't do it, KD couldn't do it, Steph and Michael took years to pull it off, and yet somehow we don't just want, but we expect this 19-year-old kid to do it. I really think some fans don't understand the pressure that they are putting on Wembanyama. He could be great, amazing, injury-free, generational, and to expect this level of excellence out of him could still be far too much. Over the past 25 seasons, the average MVP finishes the season with a win share total of 15.2. Over that same time span, the average All-Star has a win share total of 10. And among the 450 active players in any given season, the average single-season win share total across the league is just 2. Now, over the last 25 years, among number 1 overall picks in their rookie season, the average win share total is 4.2. That number jumps to 5.7 in their second season and then hits 7.9 in their third season. But by season 4, many of these once prodigies start to lose their minutes. They fall out of the rotation, they fail to adapt their game and skill sets to the NBA, and the average win share falls to 6.7. And by season 5, by the time we as fans have made a decision on these players, the average win share total falls to just 5.9. About the same as the average starter in the NBA. This is the career of an average #1 overall pick in the NBA. We see #1 overall players as the guys who went on to have great careers, guys like Kyrie and Anthony Davis and LeBron. But we forget that far more often, these #1 overall picks pan out to be players like Markelle Fultz, Andrea Bargnani, and Kwame Brown. But even for the groundbreaking prospects who are league ready the day they put on an NBA jersey, the result is still rarely a championship or real hardware or impact. Over the last 25 years, the players who had the largest impact in their rookie season were Chris Paul, Ben Simmons, and Blake Griffin, followed by the 12 next best rookies of the last 25 seasons. You are looking at the greatest rookie seasons of this century, and yet only half of them were even the best player on their team by the end of their first season in the league. But I want y'all to take a guess at how many of these players even made the playoffs in their rookie season. Got your answer? 2. Which means out of the 15 best rookies who've entered the league over the last 25 seasons, not a single one of them led their team to the playoffs. And among these same 15 rookie sensations, by their third season in the league, only 4 of them managed to lead their team to the playoffs as the best player on the team. It is very hard to win in the NBA, but like some sort of gambling addict, us NBA fans like to count the wins while ignoring the losses. Somehow the countless misses we've had are outweighed by the 1 or 2 we got right. Is Victor Wembanyama the most hyped NBA prospect of all time? Well, I'm not sure. Some experts that have been around a lot longer than I have would like to say so, but if my memory serves me right, I can recall a 17-year-old LeBron James drawing so much attention that he managed to have an Ohio high school basketball game featured on national television. Long before social media, the likes of LeBron James, Patrick Ewing, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar were all household names before they even put on an NBA jersey. I don't know if Wembanyama is at that level of hype at the moment, but he's getting there. And with that amount of hype comes overwhelming pressure to perform. It's easy to sit back and watch this kid play, see his incredible tools in action, 7 feet 5 inches tall, 8-foot wingspan with a silky smooth jump shot and world-class defensive instincts, and one can only assume he will find immediate or even eventual success in the form of championships and cultural impact in the NBA. Coaches and scouts who have been around the game for decades and have seen every prospect rise through the ranks over the years are saying Victor Wembanyama is better than all of them. It would take an era-defining talent to come into the NBA and transform a franchise into a dynasty. But if Victor is everything we think he is, he may just be the next player to do it.